countries than they were of fascist Germany. And this prevailing sentiment amongst the world's ruling class led America's elite to attempt a fascist coup.
The American corporate interests were less afraid of Nazi buildup, more afraid of communism, so they supported Nazi operations enormously. And in 1934, they planned to unify the United States with Nazi Germany. It almost happened. It almost became a worldwide government connected with Nazi Germany. But something happened. One person did something wise. That's why I hope to do something wise in exposing church as family, honesty, happy, cheerful, wonderful truth meal, where we're all ready to die, but we're all close together and pure-hearted to one another and pure-hearted to God.
Coup d'etat in 1934. I hope it will be plain to people by now that Hitler's economic miracle is the greatest myth in human history. There was no economic miracle. There are no miracles. And if there are, why can't the Germans do it all again now? If you want to construct a network of new roads and new steelworks and new factories, you need one thing: money. You need investment. And the investment didn't come from Hitler. It came from Brown Brothers Harriman and their business associate, Fritz Thyssen. It came from Hjalmar Schacht and his best friend, Sir Montague Collett Norman. It came from men like Axel Wenner-Gren, the Swedish multimillionaire arms manufacturer, and Charles Bedaux, the French business mogul.
These are all supporters of the amazing Nazi machine, and lots of it is flowing from America and England, building World War II as a plan, building both sides, building the American side, building the Nazi side. Sounds crazy? It's not.
These people were all in the same bed with their Nazi friends, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, the Dulles brothers, Prescott Sheldon Bush, and George Herbert Walker, with whom they'd created the Union Bank for laundering Nazi money. And with stage one of their plan for world domination complete, they now turned to the second phase, which was meant to be the overthrow of American democracy and the imposition of fascist government upon the United States.
The overflow of American democracy almost happened. There was almost an alignment between America and Nazi Germany to take over the world. It could have happened.
In order to pull this off, these Nazis raised money from America's richest families, many of whom, in this new consumerist society, had become household names. The Colgate family, the Birdseye family, the DuPont family, the Rockefeller family. These people handed over millions to the American financiers of Hitler so they could hire, train and supply a private army which would attempt to overthrow the democratically elected government of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and impose fascist dictatorship in America. Of course, it's natural to wonder, considering they had such advantages, how on earth they failed to pull it off. The simple answer is that they chose the wrong man, because their choice to leave...
This is amazing. They were ready to mobilize 50,000 troops in the time of the Depression to set aside the American government. The American government would have been unified with the fascist governments of Germany and Italy, but one person put on a show.
lead this Nazi insurrection was Major General Smedley Darlington Butler, the most decorated soldier of the period and in all of American history, perhaps the most unsung hero of all.
Smedley Butler. Know this guy.
Because Smedley Butler was the most genuine Democrat and lover of liberty the world has ever seen.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff or as a club at least, to intimidate the government and break down our democratic institutions.
Like the brown shirts in Nazi Germany, a bunch of military people, angry, teamed up in a mobilized team to change public opinion and to blow away government control.
The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government. My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. I want to retain the right to vote, the right to speak freely, and the right to write. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe. No dictatorship can exist with suffrage, freedom of speech, and press.
Smedley Butler tricked the plotters into thinking he was interested for just long enough until he was sure who all the major players were, and then he told the president. This put FDR in a quite impossible position. America at that time was just coming out of the Great Depression. The last thing he wanted was to cause another economic downturn, and he feared that if he scooped up all the leading bankers and captains of industry in the United States and threw them all in jail, the country just might fall apart. So what could he do? To Smedley Butler's utter incredulity, he chose, in the end, to do nothing. In spite of the fact that these men had committed treason and should have been hanged, their power was such that they were not even charged, let alone tried. And
Okay, so these American financiers put together the power behind the Nazi regime. They were building the Nazi war machine. They had helped Hitler get into power. And then they were planning to take American veterans, 500,000 of them, and to do the same thing in America. But JFK had just submitted to the world bankers and allowed the country to be bailed out of the Depression by putting the United States citizenship into the Social Security system, making them agents of the world banking industry. So he had already cared for the World Bank powers. Smedley Butler was about to be called by these guys to raise an army to set aside the American government. The plot was exposed, but the president did not accuse these powerful business people who are more powerful than mere government. What's his name? Roosevelt did not accuse these people of treason. He did not accuse them of treason. He just did nothing. They had hoped to unify their man, Adolf Hitler. The British banking industry picked Adolf Hitler and supported him. They had planned the war between Britain and Nazi Germany. They had planned it all, and the attempt to unify America with the dictatorships in Italy and in Germany failed at this moment. And then the Americans became warriors against Germany instead of ones who joined in with Germany. There could have been a fascist state in Italy, Germany, England, and America. There could have been a fascist state. If you look even deeper, the Fabian Society created the communist uprising because they knew that getting evil forces together could actually cause Christian people to justify killing, which is anti-Christ. The Luciferian agenda, the evil Lucifer agenda underneath of the money powers, is really the source of all these things. People are ignorant of Christ. Watch what happens.
And so great was their influence, they were able to keep America out of the war until December the 7th, 1941.
See, those guys were fueling the Nazi war machine. All the ball bearings, the Ford motor plants, all of this stuff was building the Nazi war machine. They didn't want Americans to get into the war or to oppose Germany, but they were building both sides. That's how people make money. You basically put some bets on both sides, and so regardless of who wins or loses, you win.
With the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt finally realized he had to do something. His response was the Trading with the Enemy Act, which allowed him to seize assets like the Union Bank, through which Bush, Walker, and Harriman had been financing Thyssen.
Okay. These people in New York had financed the Nazis enormously. Then there began to be a break, but there were secret agreements that were going through Switzerland and many other places where American manufacturing continued to fuel the Nazi machine that was killing Americans. This is reality. We have not been given the real news.
Roosevelt didn't realize, however, that it was already a case of too little, too late. Because without his knowledge, American business moguls had been tumbling over one another for 2 years in their efforts to assist and do business with the Hitler regime. Typical.
Everybody had been working so hard in America to make money supporting Hitler because it was good business to support a war.
Of this American spirit of enterprise was Sosthenes Ben, the president of AT&T, who flew immediately to Berlin when war was declared to put in Hitler's phone lines. He gave the Nazis the most high-tech, state-of-the-art telecommunications system in the world at that time, so that Hitler could rule the European mainland with the maximum efficiency. Rich men have been hiring thugs to do their dirty work, especially to frighten people, since human civilization began.
I may die like that man just because I'm speaking the truth. I have been executed, politely brushed off the table by so many people, by so many words. Oh, well, I'm never going to do that. Well, my pastor and his wife don't do those things. I have been brushed off and assassinated by many, many people. But what I write and what I communicate will stay alive in Jesus' name.
What people have to try to appreciate is that Nazism, in reality, was simply the first time in human history that the rich had enough wealth to hire an entire country of thugs to do their dirty work.
For the first time that the rich had enough power to hire an entire country to do their dirty work. Now, Washington, D.C. is doing that dirty work. If you're not aware of that, then that's a shame. Let me just take you back to the early Christian writings. if you get yourself involved in the governments and politics of this world, if you submit to the controllers of military and government money powers, you are denying Christ and you are despising God. That was the word. You cannot be involved in trying to control the population. You can't be border police. You cannot be a soldier. You cannot be a person who is enforcing laws, and especially a person who is putting people in jail and executing people for crimes. Your job is life, to create a family that trains children who are aware of eternity and the things of the spirit realm. Your job is training children to be constantly purifying their hearts, not to be emotionally involved or agree with the tricky propaganda governments and money powers of this world.
Some of the most emotive images in world history are those of the Nazi war machine sweeping across the Low Countries to begin their occupation of France. And people have always assumed that the trucks used for the miles-long troop convoys must have been German trucks. But if anyone at that time had taken the trouble to lift up the cowling and look at the engine, they would have found these were actually Ford trucks, which had been built with personal permission from Henry Ford, who was sitting in his office 4,000 miles away in Dearborn, Michigan, a service for which he was given the Grand Cross of the Eagle, the highest honor the Nazis ever bestowed on a civilian.
Ford sued the U.S. Army, the U.S. government in the 50s because during the war the U.S. Air Force bombed their tank-making facilities in Germany. And this is true. And what was it, like 52 or something? They sued the U.S. government for destroying their factories, and they won. They won the lawsuit. So I had to write a little song for Henry here.